Good morning again, colleagues. My name is Lawrence Asani from the RCD department at the Postgraduate School. So before I begin the session, I'd just like to notify everybody that the session will be recorded. And let me just I'm delighted to be your moderator for today's workshop. I'd like to start off by thanking all the attendees for taking their time to join us. Most importantly, we would like to thank our presenter, Prof. Shukwana, for her efforts in preparing and giving us this presentation. So before we begin the session, I would like to go over a few housekeeping rules. Please note that the session will be recorded and all the materials and the slides will be uploaded on the model communities at the end of the week. If you have any question during the workshop, please feel free to use the chat box or the Q&A function, and I will unmute your mic and I'll indicate to the presenter so that we may address the question. A feedback survey will be sent during the session or in the chat session, and would request you to please fill out so that we may gain insight on whether this workshop was useful and how we can improve in the future, as well as please to provide some kind word to our facilitator for their hard work. And also we use this feedback survey for the facilitators and the RCD reporting. So before I begin this session, I would like to introduce our facilitator today, Prof. Annie Barbara Chukwana. She's a PhD in University of Bergen. She is an associate professor in the Department of Politics and International Relations in the University of Johannesburg. She teaches comparative politics, African politics, political risk analysis, and research methods. She has supervised 6 doctoral, 7 master's students to completion between 2018 and 2024. She is the member of the International Advisory Committee for the Research Program on Security and Rule of Law in Fragile and Conflict-Affected Settings, programs managed by the Netherlands Research Council and the NWO WOTRO Science for Global Development. So without any further ado, I would like to present our presenter today, Prof. Annie Chukwana. You may begin the session, Prof. Sorry, Prof. Can you hear me enough, Prof? Am I audible enough? Yes. I would just like to give a few minutes for Prof. Shukwana. I think she might be having some technical issues. So we'll begin the session now. Just confirming with Prof. Shukwana. Apologies about that again, your colleagues. Prof. Shikona is just having some issues. She will shortly join the session. Thank you.
Get a fire and get a blanket and watch Showmax. Where is the Showmax again?
Hi, Johannes. We have made you a presenter. I think you with Prof. Annie. You can go ahead and share your screen.
Oh, okay, thanks. She's
Thank
here.
you so much. I just wanted to let everyone know, apologies and thank you for your patience. I see that the presenter is having a little bit of trouble with activity issues, but if you can please just bear with us a few more minutes, we will update you. I see they have entered the session again.
Worry about yourself.
You're doing a presentation? Okay. Will you do? And it is in slideshow.
Wait, you want to go
In slideshow.
slideshow for me? Okay, but here,
How do I even open?
here, so this is how it goes. Wait,
It's fine.
just wait. Yeah, use the
Okay. Good morning, gentlemen. Sorry for the delays. We had to switch our laptops. I got the information that we could use Johannes' laptop rather late. We had already set up with my cranky laptop. So sorry about that. Okay. I think I have the simplest task, of any workshop that has ever been conducted at UJ and anywhere else. That is to simply take you through the process of, the assessment submission procedures. What exactly is required? Why do we sometimes have problems and forms, get sent back and you get hundreds of emails from your faculty contact person on your submissions? So you have successfully gone through your supervising journey. You have completed or you're about to complete. What then do you do next? How do you prepare for submission? Submission procedures is reflected in the title here. It's not just one of the simple procedure, but it's a number of procedures that you have to go through. So how are these organized? Everything that you submit for a student here regarding an examination and assessment, it's all organized around the one-stop form. Here is a clip of the cover page of the famous one-stop form. Now, this form here, I think it is the fulcrum on which the entire submission process hinges on. you have to constantly check for updated forms, because I've noticed that almost every year you get an updated version of the form. So if you fill an old version, you are going to redo everything again. So you start, by making sure that you have this one-stop form, the latest version. It is always dated. And in our faculty, I think it's Tanya, who uploads it together with the faculty documents, and you can click on that SharePoint link and download this latest form here. Now, I'm not going to go through this form because it's quite tedious and exhausting. I think in the beginning I was very intimidated by it as well, and there's just a lot, of things that you need to do. But immediately after filling in the cover page, you have to make sure that you type in the student's correct details, the student number, everything, the title, and your title must correspond to the title that was accepted by the FHDC. Any slight deviation, if you add B or plus or anything, it will be sent back, and then you have to go through the procedure of getting that title accepted. So make sure that you adhere to everything that was signed off by the FHDC before you started on the journey itself, once the proposal was accepted. So you complete this first part. And for me, what works is that once you have this form for a student, you keep it in a file for that student on your laptop, and then you just keep on going, updating the sessions or the sections as you go on. You do not start another form, otherwise it becomes too much, because sometimes you need to send the information to the student for them to reflect their title and put in their student number and any other details, including your own staff number as well. So once you have secured this form and you've, filled in the background information here just below this cover page, you are ready and set to go. Then you sit and begin to think, sit back and begin to think on the types of submissions that you have to go through with usually master's students and doctoral students. Now, it's not just one submission. There are different types of submissions for each and every thesis and dissertation, or even mini dissertation. The first stage that you embark on is the nomination of the assessors. And this is one type of submission. This begins the assessment journey for that students. So you nominate your assessors using the first step form, and I will explain that in the following slides. Then the second type is the actual assessment itself. You also do another submission using the OSF again for the actual assessment, the actual examination, where you're sending out your students' thesis, dissertation to be examined. Then, if there happens to be, conflicting outcomes, from this assessment process, then you have to go through another process again of nominating another assessor. At times, you may have to, depending on the nature of the conflicts and the conflicting results that you get, you may even have to appoint an expert advisor, assessor, who will pretty much like adjudicate on the process. And once you pass that hurdle, that is, should you have gone through this conflicting reassessment process, you also again need to nominate for the reassessment. Remember, it's no longer the initial assessment, it's now a reassessment. So that's another procedure where again you're still using the OSF form. The form will haunt you for a very long time, in this process. And assuming you've resolved the conflict here, should you have had one, then you go to you do your viva and everything here. I'm not speaking to those issues of the viva because there's nothing that you are submitting there. Then once that process has been done, you then go to the graduation, the final submission itself after assessment. This is the one that's, prepares everything for the graduation of the student, and the faculty puts a lot of pressure on this final OSF submission documents, etc. So you begin with the process of nominating of your assessors. Now, this, of course, is the second section. Remember, section A was the cover page with details of the students and a lot of other information, including your staff number and so forth. So in the section B here, you are nominating your assessors and your non-assessing chair. The non-assessing chair is somebody within the department who will reconcile the assessments that will be done by the external assessors and take a position, and then he will forward this as well to the faculty, and the faculty, of course, it always gets to the FHDC, and they'll make a decision depending on the nature of the non-assessment chair's report. So here, 4 months prior the submission of the thesis itself, you have to nominate your assessors. This is a long process because it has to go to the external examiners. Sometimes you run into problems. Some respond late. Some will send you incomplete CVs. Some are outright rejected by the FHDC, which vets and accepts these assessors. So here we have to make sure that when you nominate your assessors, you get their CVs, you get some written confirmation from them that they will do these assignments, and you also have to comply with the dates, for the nomination of assessors is, announced by the faculty. I think the departmental higher degree committees, they normally have these dates and they announce them to you. And also you must nominate a backup assessor, because one of them can be rejected, or in some instances, some people will receive everything and the thesis and they just don't do the work. It has happened, we've seen it, and sometimes you can chase somebody for 6-7 months, and that's very difficult when it's like a doctoral thesis that they're examining, because it's a lot of work that goes into it, and whoever you bring in or you bring on board will have to spend pretty much the same amount of time. So you just need to be very careful there when you nominate these assessors. The form, of course, it also checks, the checks and balances, and it makes sure that you are not like appointing people that you are close to, people you've been collaborating with, etc. These have to be independent assessors, and you find those guidelines in the form. Now, the assessor requirements must be complied with, and this varies according to the type of project that is being assessed. If it is a mini dissertation, you need just 2 assessors with a minimum of a master's degree, and one of them has to be external to UJ. In any case, you need that backup assessor in case something happens with one of the other 2. If it is a dissertation, you need 2 assessors external to UJ. Again, one must have a doctoral degree, one must have a master's, and again, a backup assessor. And all these backup assessors must be external to the to UJ. If it is a thesis, here, speaking to doctoral thesis, you need 3 assessors who are all external to the UJ. And I think, this is what is written on the OS form, but I've noticed that when you submit this to the DHDC contact person in the department, they always scrutinize the form and they'll tell you that you need to get at least one of them must be from outside South Africa, must be external, South Africa. So one of them must be external. Sorry, my slides have moved. Sorry. One of them must be external to South Africa. And the most important thing on all these forms is that, of course, you put in the correct detail, but then you must also sign off these forms. And there's always a box for signatories that you must sign. The one reason most forms get sent back is because people forget to sign, or they miss a signature. And remember, when you're nominating your assessors, you also nominate your non-assessing chair, somebody within the department who will do the aggregation of the assessments from these other external examiners. So what documents then are needed for the submission? Because now you've nominated your assessors, you are ready, you wait your 4 months period, the student has finished the thesis, it's ready for submission, everything. What documents do you need? You have gone through thesis, dissertation, you're happy with it. The first thing that you need, of course, will be the one-stop form again. And this time you are going to fill in a different section, which I'll show you in the next slide. And here you are, of course, requesting for permission to submit. You have your full thesis in Word version and in PDF version. You submit both versions here. You submit your Turnitin report, a full Turnitin report, and similarity should be less than 20%. This is what it says in the faculty guidelines, but in our department, we normally put it keep it at 13% for doctoral students. So your similarity can be above 13%. I'm not sure whether this varies by discipline, but I think for doctoral students, it's usually 13% at most. And even when you write books, articles, for publication, I think the cap is put at 13%. You need an affidavit, with a commissioner of auth stamp. The student is the one who will go and get this affidavit to swear that they did not plagiarize. This is their original work, etc. And then the commissioner of auth will stamp it, and it's one of the documents they will scan and put together in the package that they will send to you. You also need the supervisor student agreement form. You sign this at the very beginning of the process 3 years before, but you must keep a record of this for every student, because when the time comes to examine, they will ask for this. Of late, I've noticed that they are also asking for the proof of registration since last year. The proof of registration is a must document. You can submit everything else, but if you don't have that proof that the student is registered in the current year of submission, then you are going to hit a brick wall there. So you need to submit that. And then you also submit your supervisor's report. As the supervisor, you write your own report, and you must submit that with all this. You don't submit these items one at a time, but it's all in one package, in one email that you send off to your faculty contact person. So now these are the 2, 4, 6, 7 documents that you need. I think if maybe the students took some time off or whatever, I think that proof is also attached. You also need to provide that information, but this is not a normal practice for most submissions. Now, the submission for assessment form, this is the section of the OS, the one-stop form that you complete. Here, as I say, indicated asking for permission to submit for assessments. And of course, you put in your dates and everything. The important thing is that you indicate in the relevant box here, so that you are sure you're satisfied that this is original work by the students, and that you've gone through all the screening processes in preparation for the submission. Now, after each section, whether it's section C, B, C, D, E, F, you get this section with the signatories here. This section must always be completed. The student signs it, the supervisor. If there's a co-supervisor, they must sign, and then the HOD. However, you don't need to put in your original signature. I remember when I was in the FHDC, there were issues of concerns of people using their original signatures, that people can copy them and use them for other things. So I don't think you have to use your original signature. You can just type in your name, or sometimes you type in your name and you can choose one of those fancy fonts that looks like a signature. And the same applies to the supervisor. Not too sure what the HOD does, because when he does that, it's now coming from the DHDC person that you submit to, or sometimes the faculty contact person will secure that signature there. Now, remember, we did mention that after section C, we have compiled all your documents, you've completed your SF form, and then the outcomes a bit stressful for you because they are not what you expected. I mean, one supervisor has a completely different opinion from the other, and there's no way, that you can even pull together, a consensus from these examiners and mark, pass the students or fail the student. So in that event, you again go back to your section D. Of course, you get all this information and the outcomes from your faculty contact person. So you go back to the OSF section D, and here you do this nomination again of an additional assessor, depending on the issue at hand, or also you can nominate an expert advisor who will pretty much adjudicate on the, the outcomes here between the conflicting parties. Again, you will need their full CV, and you complete the form in the same manner as you did for section C. You need to make sure that you have not used the same person again the last 2 years, and that the person is not somebody within the UJ system. So you just always have to be alert and to pay attention to that. Now, should you have settled on nominating an expert advisor? Of course, this decision is something that you make, with the non-assessing chair involved. Sometimes you end up involving the HOD, and you sit up and discuss on these outcomes. So if you are nominating an expert advisor, you need to make sure that the person is an advisor on the theme, in the dissertation, on the thesis. So here you again, you indicate it's an expert advisor, the form shows that. And then it means if you are nominating an expert advisor, you are going to skip section C. You'll go to the expert advisor. And here you will submit a CV again of the expert advisor and follow the same procedures as before, looking at when you last used this person, relationships, etc. Because this should be, again, an independent assessor, and who is going to go over this process and pretty much adjudicate on these conflicting outcomes. Now, should you have to do a reassessment, you then have to go on and fill in section E. Remember, the documents that I mentioned before, those 7 documents, they still stand. That's what you will be using through the section D, section E. So here, if you are submitting for reassessment, you complete section E and you request for permission for reassessment again and put your X in the relevant column. And obviously there will be the signatories below that section, and you make sure that everything is signed again. It doesn't matter how many times you do it, the signatures must reflect throughout. And because you do this in different stages, you are going to notice that you may have one form for your student, but when you are doing section E, for example, it means your section B, C, D are blank. You are only covering section A and section E. The same would apply if you are also doing section C. It means section B would be blank. So you just have section A and the section C. So you just need to be very careful with the sections, because they will not delete any sections that you have completed wrongly. They will simply send it back to you. And even if they can type in the name of the supervisors or assessors, if they know them, they're not going to do that. It will be sent back to you, and you lose time, each time. And sometimes you are racing for time, especially with like doctoral students and even the masters, because then you also need to maybe you're timing it to go to the Senate at a certain date. So you need to be very time conscious of all these processes and the time it takes to process them, because This form, no matter how many times you fill it, it will go through the FHDC for each section. Now, here you have completed everything, and here I'm using the doctoral students for illustration here. You have completed everything, assuming or whether you've gone through a reassessment and it's, the outcomes are positive, or whether you skip that section, your outcomes were positive. After section C, you then proceed to the final submission here. Remember, the student gets comments that they should address, that they should address from the examiners, and they address, all these comments, and that takes time, usually 2 months or so. Some do it quickly, can take 3-4 weeks. Some are very lucky, do a relatively clear job, and have pretty much nothing to correct in their thesis. So there are great variations here on this issue. But for this final submission form here, you need, again, your final one-stop form, section F. That is what you will excuse me, you will complete and make sure that you get it signed off. Otherwise, your student will not graduate. It will not go to the FHDC, and it won't go to the Senate in time, and they'll miss out on the graduation. Now, here on this one-stop form, you are filling section F, right? And the reasons the student has completed, etc., etc., etc. But you must also complete in your laudation all the abstracts that will be read out, during the graduation. And here, this must not be more than 75 words. And you also write in the CV that must not exceed 100 words. This is the student CV, not your the supervisor CV. So your final one-stop form has to have the section F completed, and you complete the abstract part, you complete the CV part, and get your signatures. After that, you will need 2 articles from the student for publication. Usually, I think in our department, we normally have articles that some publish whilst they are doing their doctoral thesis. So it's a relatively easy process to just submit those publications. And some, they work on articles, or extract something from their thesis and turn it into an article for publication, and make sure that it is of a publishable quality. And then they can submit that, as one of the articles. Usually we encourage that at least 1 article must be published, and the other article can be extracted from the thesis, or it can be something else relevant to the theme they wrote on, and it is a publishable standards, article. And the supervisor is the judge of this. The supervisor has to scrutinize the articles that are being submitted, as publications here. And if they do not meet publication standards, then the work has to be redone there, because this whole package is forwarded, to the FHDC and to the Senate as well. So you need to make sure that your students' articles are of a good quality. Here you have your final corrected thesis here. We usually have this in a PDF format, the final corrected thesis, because this is the version that will go into the library. This thesis, of course, is accompanied by the list of corrections from all 3 assessors. And you give your responses to each and every issue they raised. You will explain how you responded to this. You can indicate the page number in the thesis where you attended to these corrections. So this is a very important, part of the package, this list of corrections, because the Senate has to ensure itself that it is passing off things of a good quality, and it will want to check on the comments that were made and how you addressed them, and how they reflect on the quality of the final thesis that is going to go into the library. So this list of corrections is a must here. Then you also have to do the library form. This is a form that the library gives you. You have to contact the library. The student has to go and do that. They contact the library. They are given this form in prep for graduation and submitting their thesis. And then they sign this form. It comes to you and you sign off. I think you also sign off on whether they have returned all materials that they borrowed from the library as well. If this applies as well to the master's students, except for the articles for publication, what is needed here. However, for doctoral students, you will need the Viva report that will be compiled by the non-assessing chair. The non-assessing chair will write his reports, basing, of course, on the supervisor's report as well as the assessor's reports. And this is submitted directly to the faculty. I don't remember ever seeing a non-assessing chair's reports. But usually, again, they sort of get a consensus, draw a consensus from the assessments and take a position as to whether the student should be passed or, whatever the outcome is. But our assumption here is that everything has gone well and the students has been passed. So the NAC chair sends this directly to the faculty contact person. I think in our department we send this to Apiwe, Somabele, and I suspect every department probably has its own contact person, or maybe we use the same contact person. I'm not too sure, who we use. But there is that contact person for postgraduates in every faculty who receives all these issues and reviews and checks, goes through a checklist that I'm going to provide at the end of this. And then we'll see what happens in that process. And that's when it goes off to the Senate. So here it looks like there's a lot that is needed for this process here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 items. But then the one-stop form has 3 sections that you need to complete. Now, you have those documents. That is just the preparation. These are just the documents that you need. This is what you need, right? Now we begin the process itself of the submission. And so in that process here, you fill that section F that I was talking about. You are going to basically confirm that corrections were made and that the supervisor has read them. And when the supervisor has confirms this with the assessing chair, because he also takes responsibility on this issue. And you complete this on section F. And once you do that, it's a very short section. And then there is a bottom row of signatories here again, and you sign everything, all the people that should sign, the non-assessing chair, the supervisor, the HOD, etc. And then you are ready to roll. This section F, again, has a continued part of the section. And if, there are variations, like I'm saying, remember, for the levels and the types. If it is for MA dissertations, you declare, you put your X in that declaration. If it is for a doctoral thesis, you put an X in that declaration. And the difference here has to do with the fact that for the doctoral thesis, you are confirming the acceptance of the 2 published outputs, the 2 publications that doctoral students must provide. And I think with masters, some request that there be a copy of a publication as well, or something ready for publication. But I don't remember us doing this in our department. Remember, this form changes as well every year. The new things are added. So if this 2023, this latest form is saying this, then that is what you must do. But for the minor thesis, minor dissertations, you don't have to do it. And it is below this that you write your 75-word laudation as well as your CV for the student. Everything you're writing there is about the thesis, the abstract of the thesis. You can't extract the full abstract because it's always way above 75 words, so you need to shorten it, and this is what you read in front of everybody on graduation day. But the CV is something that people can read on their own in the booklet, on the life history of the student and their academic journey, and that is 100 words. Normally we ask the student to compile this part of the CV, and you can edit it and put it in here. Well, students have very different stories and different backgrounds, and some want to project themselves very differently. So we normally let the students write the CV component of this form, and below that you put in your required signatures. Now, the last slide here is about the checklists of the things that you have submitted for the graduation, for the final correction of the thesis, what level it is and what type, whether it's a thesis, dissertation, or a minor dissertation, but all these items on the checklist, they apply. You just need to make sure that you are applying them to the correct context here. The first thing that you need to do, like I said, remember proof of registration. You have to confirm that student is registered for the academic year and the semester you are currently in, which means they want that proof of registration. I noticed this year I had someone who had submitted last year, remember, by October 31, but the assessors took long, and the thesis got back to him in January, February. And in the past, we didn't pay, the students didn't have to pay registration fees, but this year they required it. So he had to pay fees, despite the fact that it was the assessors who delayed. And there isn't much that anybody can do regarding these assessors. They also take their own time. There are professionals who do other things as well. Maybe they are assessing 10, essay thesis or whatever. So, I mean, you just have to take it in your stride, the time, pace at which they will work. Okay. I don't know if anybody is still here, but just make sure that you go through that checklist and ignore the issues that those numbers like LSREG2, those are things pertaining to the library and to the faculty and to the Senate. Make sure that you have your library form, your list of corrections, your LSF, your NAC and assessor report, supervisor report, your CV, and your 2 articles. And after that, your faculty person will upload these onto the library ETD folder. So in short, these are the things that you need for submission procedures, because you are submitting for different types of things. You make different types of submissions. It's not just one submission and it's done. Okay, thank you for listening.
Thank you so much, Prof. Chukwana. Is there anyone with any questions? If you want to raise any questions to Prof. Annie, and we can address them to her, or you can type in the chat box, then we may address all the questions to her. So you may unmute your mic and speak. Yes.
I can see Lawrence LD, his hand is up.
Yes.
Hi, Prof.
Hi.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for your presentation. It was very informative. I just have one question. Just What happens in the case where the 4-month rule cannot be adhered to when it comes to choosing of the assessors? For example, if a student, is maybe done before their deadline, is there any room or anything that's allowed to kind of fast track the process in terms of selection of assessors for thesis examination?
Okay. I don't think we can fast track it, but once they have completed, if they finish earlier, like say 6 months before, expectation, then what you do is you complete your form. It goes to the FHDC because the FHDC has, set meetings, So
Yes.
when the next meeting comes up, if your documents are in, the FHDC will attend to it. If you know the schedule and you follow the schedule of these things, it's relatively easier,
Yes.
to try to make shortcuts. So as long as the FHDC sees this information, that's fine, because then you will be able to proceed. They will be able to appoint the assessors. The challenge is that once you have nominated your assessors, the people you have to wait, for them, the faculty, you write to them, they agree,
Yes.
etc. Right? The faculty also confirms, and then they'll send the information to them. That's always the part where I notice a lot of delays, responses by
Okay.
the assessors. They don't respond as quickly as you think they can. But I normally, if I know I have something that's gone out for assessment, I actually write to them immediately, like a day before, and say, look, this has been submitted. Look out for this, and please make time for it. And
Okay.
at the end of the day, it boils down to the availability and the time and commitment of the assessors. Because I think we have actually gotten to a stage where we identify people who are very difficult assessors, who will not respond in time, who will
Yes.
really drag on and affect everything else. So once we know that person, we just avoid them, because we've compiled a list of assessors. People bring in different assessors from different expertise, and you compile a full list of them in the department, and that makes it easier. If you, and then you know who was appointed when, and then you can just select from there. Or if it's a different area altogether, you can appoint from outside. But then should you need a backup assessor, you just go to that list and extract somebody from there, from that list, and then you add on to your CV, as long as they haven't been used in the last 2 years. The thing is just to be sure about the timing for the FHDC.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much, Prof. Really appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Prof. I don't know if there's anyone with any more questions for Prof. Annie. You may also type it in the chat box if you have any questions for her. Then we may address it to her. Okay, I see Dr. Chandra, you have a question for Prof. Annie?
Yes. Hi, Prof. Annie. Thank you for a very informative talk. Mine is coming more from being a research capacity development coordinator for the postgraduates and a supervisor myself. So recently we've gotten a lot of questions about whether students should be privy to selection of the examination process, selection of the external examiners, sorry. And I wanted to know your thoughts on that.
Whether students should be privy to the examiners who will be appointed to assess their work.
Yes, and I think that those questions were raised because students maybe there were aspects of they know these external examiners mark a certain way, or they've seen their work and are not up to date with the university standards and things like that. These are just things that I've heard though from conversations that are going on.
Okay, yeah, I think maybe it's just talk, but it's possible, because I remember when I was doing my PhD, I was asked to identify potential examiners, and obviously you pick people And I gave 2-3 names. Of course, none of them were ever approached, and the university appointed its own. I don't think we are going to go in that direction anytime soon, because already we have a challenge with supervisors nominating the same person over and over again. That's why the 2-year rule was implemented, to make sure that people diversify their pool of assessors. You're not just relying on James, whom you know, who will be lenient with your assessments and your outcomes. So I think people can just talk, but I do not think we will get there anytime soon, because the whole issue of objectivity dominates here. So there has to be that objective assessment by people who have expertise in the area. I mean, whether from a theoretical or perspective, a methodological, or even the substantive, the content itself. So I do not think that will happen anytime soon. We don't even discuss it. With us, the issue is simply making sure that any is not picking the same assessor every 2 years, or I wait for the 2 years to lapse, then I go back to that person, because then that becomes a clear pattern. So we tend to identify different new examiners all the time, almost all the time, because of those challenges. You can, however, draw from the list the department has and use others somebody else has used, as long as you have not used them. And I think, for instance, I have not used anybody that I knew at all. It was really reading around, identifying people, experts in the area, and then approaching them. Because we scrutinize that a lot, the whole issue of utilizing the same assessor.
Thank you, Prof. Annie. Yeah, I actually agree with the 2-year rule, and it also rules out, I guess, favoritism as well, and any underlying feelings the students might have towards certain repeat use of external examiners. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you so much. We say something, Prof?
I don't see a hand. Nobody has questions anymore.
Yeah, I see there's no hand and no question. In that sense, would it be fine if we close the session?
Yes. Thank you.
Okay. So in that sense, I'd like to give thanks to our facilitator today, Prof. Annie, for wonderful insight on the preparing students for the submission process and all the requirements for what's needed for a submission process of whether a master's, PhD, or doctoral. And we really appreciate all your insights and the presentation that you gave us today. And we at the RCD unit appreciate you, Prof. Annie. And thank you so much for all your efforts and your hard work. And thank you again to all the attendees that made their time to be available for this very insightful session. And in that sense, I would like to close the session and just also remind all the participants that I have posted the feedback survey in the chat box, and please to kindly fill it out as well. And thank you so much again. And in that sense, I will close the session. Thank you again, and have yourself a very wonderful day.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.